Our next presentation is from Mike Holcomb. Mike is a fellow and director of ICS and OT cybersecurity at Fluor, which is a construction company an engineering and construction company in the industry, if I recall correctly. He'll discuss a topic out of the present draft version of NERC's SIP standards roadmap, which identifies the lack of sufficient trained OT cybersecurity personnel as a risk. And he'll give us a potential path forward to training and getting up to speed new cybersecurity staff. Now, let me stop sharing. Oh, it's up here. Okay. Let's give Mike. Courtney, you may need to move to give Mike presentation capability.
I did just enable him as presenter.
Awesome. Thank you. And, hopefully you can see that okay.
Yes, just fine.
Awesome.
Looks good.
All right. Thank you. And thanks for the invite, for allowing me to come share with everybody, and I appreciate everybody for the time. It's always great when I can come back to power. My first project back in 2012 that I stepped foot on was a combined cycle natural gas plant for Dominion Energy out in Virginia. Kind of looks like it in the blurry picture there that AI created, but still my first love. As Lou mentioned, I work at Fluor. We're one of the world's largest engineering and construction companies. There's 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 companies our size that build OT or ICS environments like ours. And unfortunately, we don't do as much power as we used to, so it's very, very sad for me. So I do appreciate the time to be with everybody today. We did want to talk about the need for professionals in the OT, the ICS, cybersecurity space, and where we're very limited today. And part of the conversation, we'll talk about where we're headed and what that looks like over the next couple of years, and then maybe 5, 10 years from now, because I think it's going to change. It's going to change fairly quickly, in ways that some people might appreciate and others probably won't. So, but I do appreciate the time. Here's a couple of my projects. There you can see Greensville County Power Station up in the left-hand corner. Again, that was my first love. But I do talk a lot about a couple of different main cybersecurity incidents that we've seen, especially more recently, to bring a little bit more awareness and education. And it is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, of course. I do talk a lot about Frosty Goop, which was an attack that we saw in January of last year, where the Russians had used a very simple piece of malware to go in and turn off the heating in 600 apartment buildings. As 600 apartment buildings, not apartments, but 600 apartment buildings in Ukraine in the middle of winter, sub-zero temperatures outside. And you can imagine the heartache and just not knowing what's going on, that uncertainty. I can only imagine, and not having heating for 2 days because of a very, very simple piece of malware that took advantage of unauthenticated Modbus. Right, where we're not asked for usernames and passwords, where we connect to these controllers that can in turn, right, control what's going on in the real world. Of course, when I always think of Ukraine, I also think of course, the Russians and primarily the sandworm attack group, right, targeting not only critical infrastructure, but power generation and transmission in particularly, right, causing the blackouts in 2015, 2016, and then 2022, and probably a few others along the way. course, 2017, we saw Trisis, which is where the same Russian state actors had gained access to the safety instrumented systems, or the fail-safe backup for a petrochemical facility in the Middle East. Right? And the only reason that the operators had detected that there was an issue was because the SIS had tripped. And we fast forward into 2024, there was an explosion at a petrochemical facility in the United States. I'm not saying that this was the cyber attack, but there is a lot of circumstantial evidence that points to the fact this could have been the result of a cyber attack. So Dragos, considered by many the world leader in OT ICS cybersecurity, especially from a threat intelligence and monitoring perspective. Right? We're watching Sandworm attempting to get into this petrochemical environment for about 6 weeks. And then not a lot of time goes by, and then there's an explosion. And the CEO comes out and says that the explosion was created by the SIS tripping, which was a little eerie for many reasons. Of course, if we had known about Trisis, and then at the same time, the CEO came out and said, "Well, there's no sign of it's a cyber attack." And unfortunately, the problem, and this is one that thankfully NERC has been addressing lately, is that in that environment, that petrochemical facility where this explosion was in the U.S., there was no network security monitoring. Right? There was no security monitoring. So how could you even begin to say that there was no sign of a cybersecurity attack? And I guess in a way that's true. I guess they didn't have a sign internally, but that was just because they weren't looking. They didn't have the tools in place to actually watch what was going on in the network. Right? So again, a lot of circumstantial evidence. Is it a cyber attack? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. That's a big focus these days on can we get to where we can do root cause analysis effectively to determine if an impact that we see in the real world is the cause of a cyber attack. Of course, not only is it, do we need to be able to do things like network security monitoring, but we need to be able to have the people that have the skills and the knowledge to be able to determine these things. And I do spend a lot of time, especially the last couple of weeks, talking a lot about Jaguar and Land Rover, where this was a complete, utter failure from cybersecurity, from an IT perspective, from an OT perspective, right, where we actually had plants down for 5+ weeks. Some of them still aren't back online. And you had over 200,000 jobs at risk. I just think of 200,000 jobs at risk and 200,000 paychecks. And for those families without paychecks, it's just mind blowing because of significant security failures. And the attacks are only increasing, right? And across the board, including power. I think a lot of us realize we still have a long way to go also in securing power, right? So not only are the attacks increasing, but we're seeing more attackers targeting OT ICS environments or the IT networks that they're connected to. And then, no, we're not. We're not ready. We're not prepared today. We weren't prepared a couple of years ago, and we're not going to be prepared, unfortunately, for what's coming. So as a whole, unfortunately, we're not prepared. It doesn't mean us as individual entities and owners and operators can't be prepared. And so this is where talking with Lou and looking at the NERC SIP roadmap, right, and looking at this, it was really interesting to see where I think a lot of these findings that came out of the risk assessment and the survey, I think were obvious no-brainers to see on the list, but I was really curious to see where they would appear on the list. So when we did talk about insufficient cybersecurity workforce as being number 9, I thought, talking with a lot of folks out there on whether they're working in the plants or out in the field, or the owners and other operators themselves, that I think Yeah, that's probably right about where I would have expected it to be. Maybe 7 or 8, maybe especially a little higher in power. But so we did put a couple polls together. So if you're in Slido, so when we talk about that number 9, being insufficient workforce, right? How badly are you struggling to hire OT or ICS cybersecurity team members, whatever you refer to it on, in your organization, right? I'm going to put in the answer that I hear the most. So, and then they start to see a couple of answers coming in. Not sure. So maybe you just don't have visibility into the hiring. Maybe the organization isn't trying to hire team members right now. I think that could be very much the case. Definitely a lot of folks having an issue. It's one of their top 5 priorities. There's a small that says not really a concern, and doesn't look like anybody's super struggling with that. So I do get a lot of, we don't know what we're at. When I'm talking with others out in the world, I get a lot of, we're not hiring. We don't have those resources, or, we kind of have the team that we have and we're making do with what we have. And then, yeah, there are some folks that are struggling. So I appreciate everybody for jumping in. I think the truth is, and I and we didn't mention that I post on YouTube and LinkedIn about OT or ICS cybersecurity, and some of my posts and my more popular post, which is always interesting to see, right, what people engage with, right, is the idea of, there's a couple of interesting characters out there in the community, and there's a few that act as gatekeepers and are, keep everybody out of the field that they can. I think that the sad truth is we can't take that type of attitude, because I've seen, folks from an engineering background where, they only want engineers in OT. And then I've, myself, I come from an IT cybersecurity background. I just happen to work at one of the world's largest engineering companies and work with some of the most brilliant engineering minds that we have in the world today. So, if we're in engineering, sad thing is that you can talk. I work with 4,000 control system and electrical engineers in my day job. Very few of them are actually really passionate or very interested in cybersecurity. That's just the truth. And the same thing is to be said about folks that are in cybersecurity, or if we want to say IT cybersecurity today. Very few actually really care or are passionate about OT or ICS cybersecurity. We have about 35 folks on the IT cybersecurity team at Fluor, and there's one person passionate about OT ICS cybersecurity, and you're looking at him. So, it's, and I get it. It's not something for everybody. Not everybody even understands what OT or ICS is, let alone that we have to secure it, right? So there's still that very much an awareness and education game that we're playing. But when we look at 2021, when the Colonial Pipeline incident happened, right, it wasn't state adversaries that got into the control system network for the United States longest gasoline pipeline. It was a group of ransomware operators, and they weren't there to steal information. They weren't there for industrial espionage or sabotage, right? At the end of the day, they were just trying to make money. And ultimately, of course, did lead to an outage, right? The pipeline coming down for 10 days. And ever since then, we've seen a continued increase of an attacks. And that's because, the attackers realized, oh, there is this thing out there called OT, and there's this thing out there called ICS, and that we can attack it to make money. Now, thankfully, on the defensive side, we do see more folks in engineering realizing that, yeah, we do actually have to worry about cyber security in our plants. And that, oh, we have more folks in IT cybersecurity realizing, oh, there's this thing out there called OT and ICS, just like the attackers are realizing. The attackers are realizing they can attack it to make money. The defenders are realizing, oh, it might be important for us to make sure our power plants stay up and running and we're generating electricity, or that our manufacturing plants can continue to turn out whatever product, right, that they're actually producing. It's nice to have clean water and food on the table to eat. So interest has increased over the last few years, for sure, especially since Colonial Pipeline. That was our big kind of watershed moment for the industry. But things are definitely slowing down as far as interest goes. Right? And I've been tracking the space and very involved since 2010 when I first got interested because of Stuxnet. And so I watched, for 10, almost 11, 12 years where a lot of people were interested in it. And we did see a big boom because of Colonial Pipeline. And that does stretch across power generation and transmission, especially. But again, there's still challenges. And so there's another poll in there. So what challenges in hiring talent are you experiencing? So for those folks that had actually are experiencing, I know a lot of folks weren't sure. One or two probably felt like they were good for now. But if you are having those issues, let us know what those issues are. And we'll kind of let those trickle in as I kind of move forward. Because there are a lot of challenges. These are a lot of the ones that I come across in different conversations. These are the different ones that I see in different plans across both sectors. The only thing I really don't work in is in water or wastewater. But some people, yeah, they don't want to be on site, which I still never understand for someone, especially trying to get into OT or ICS, cybersecurity. That one drives me crazy, right? Unfortunately, most equivalent positions in IT, they pay more still today. I think that's equalizing, but for now, I think you're still seeing more positions in IT will actually pay more. I've seen people actually leave OT to move into IT for either more pay, less stress, or combination of both, and the ability to work from home. So we're going to talk about unrealistic expectations in a few. So I'm going to circle back to that one because that one really is both on the front of the people doing the hiring, right? When we're trying to bring in new team members and also the applicants themselves. A lot of people, they want to move into OT cybersecurity maybe because they see it as a different challenge, but maybe they don't necessarily believe in the mission. I think the vast majority of people that are in the field and that stay in the field and are really good at the job, they do believe in the mission. That's why I would say the majority of us are here. And it does take time to develop a skill set. I would say it takes about 10 years of good engineering or automation background and 10 years of cybersecurity and some kind of mixture of those to make a really solid, OT or ICS cybersecurity defender, right? And then, of course, by the time somebody gets 20 years under their belt, they're ready to retire. This is one of those reasons why it can't be an individual sport, and that we do need folks from engineering automation backgrounds, and we need people from IT cybersecurity, and we need to work together to be able to secure our environments. Otherwise, it's not going to happen because no, you're not going to be able to go and just hire somebody that has all the knowledge and the skills. You probably aren't always going to have the option to also just hire somebody that has specific knowledge to power generation and transmission. So when we wanted to put this talk together, and I wanted to focus on, well, what do we do about this? And so I really wanted to look at what I've seen work out in the world over the last 10 or so years, and especially the last couple of years. And so the idea was we can recruit, right? That we're going to sow the seeds and we're going to help build, especially the cybersecurity professionals that we're going to want to hire in a year or 2 or 5, right? But they probably don't exist today. We want to make sure the folks that we do have and the ones that we will be hiring, we have to retain them. And we don't want them, leaving to go either to another, operator, or what if they go to IT? Or what if they just get out of cybersecurity all completely because they had such a horrible experience? That's not what we want to deliver either. And reskill. So we might have employees already that we can actually train them in cybersecurity. I try to do this at any plant I ever go into. I try to get at least a basic form of cybersecurity knowledge in all of the employees that are in the plant. And then you can actually start to see, who actually picks it up and who gets really passionate about it. And you can work with them to bring them along for that cybersecurity journey. Because those people are worth their weight in gold, especially if they've been at that plant, even just for a couple of years, to understand how it operates, the physics of that plant. And then they really believe or are passionate about cybersecurity and keeping the attackers out. I mean, you can't pay, right, for that type of team member. So again, recruiting, we have, a couple of different options. Some of the big ones that I've seen that are more successful is working with, local schools, the tech colleges, the community colleges, the trade schools, plugging in with the professors, the people that run those programs. And part of that also is having internship programs. Because I can tell you, and I've taught, community colleges, you might have 30 students in a class. There's maybe 1, maybe 2 students that you would actually want to hire. So you have a lot of students in that case, right, that are going to school, wanting to do cybersecurity and now in OT or control system environments. But at the end of the day, have to be realistic, right? You're not going to want to hire the vast majority of them. So not only are you going to want to plug in with the schools and the instructors to make sure you get the cream of the crop, the people that you actually would want to hire, and then, work with them in an internship basis, bring them in, get them some real world experience, let them, put on steel-toed boots, right, and get dirty, get the experience, and then learn, right? Is this something that they want to do, and do they believe in the mission? And is this something that they can do? Or you know what, is it not, it's not a good fit, and let them go on and do something else. It's much better to let them go on and do something else if it's going to be better for them and for you in the long run. Recruiting from relevant fields, so we can bring in others from, whether it's, IT cybersecurity, from OT automation, right? PLC techs, right? I know a lot of PLC techs that really are, really interested in getting more involved in cybersecurity. Also, folks doing, networking in OT and ICS, same thing. Hiring criteria. I see a lot of crazy, requirements and job recs that are out there. Again, you're not going to find somebody with 10 years of OT or ICS experience, let alone in like power generation, and another 10 years in cybersecurity. Again, those people are very, very, very few and far between. So you have to make sure that hiring criteria is realistic, and that you might have to, lower those expectations a little bit. I'm not saying a ton, but maybe 10 to 20%. And then promote the mission. I think this is a big thing that I've seen some organizations miss, and then I've seen others, hit really well. I think of like GE Vernova right now, right? And it's all about, power generation, and a lot of course, they have a big focus on clean energy, and they promote the heck out of that. And so folks that gravitate towards that mission, they're going to gravitate towards like GE Vernova, right? Or any organization that promotes that mission that they click with. You retain, of course, this is where making sure that once we bring folks in, that they, and I think this is just very kind of general, how do you keep your employees, right? Making sure that they have career paths for upward movement. People feel like they're getting stuck. If this is what they want, not everybody wants to move up, right? But for those that do, right, they need to have that established path that they can follow. And I would still say that 70–80% of employees, they want some type of upward or forward momentum. Not everybody, but most. Right? Making sure we're doing training and certification, and we have the budget allocated, and we're sending people away. We're sending them to classes, whether it's out to, Idaho National Labs, or they're going to a conference. And maybe, we don't need to send them to, $11,000, $12,000 course at SANS necessarily, unless we have the budget. But some training, right? Some certifications, right? Helping them improve themselves and the company at the same time. It's a win-win, right? Flexible working conditions, right? It's great, sure, if you can have somebody, okay, we need you on site for 3 days a week and you can be home 2 days a week. If you're able to do that, great. And that, ultimately, our team members want to be seen. And it's not just about money at the end of the day. And it's not just about taking training or certifications or having that career path. All of that, right, matters. And of course, every employee is different. They have their own unique needs, but I think everybody understands, right? At the end of the day, right, team people just want to be treated like other people. And usually they want to feel appreciated. So, and then reskill. So you can talk about, a lot of times we have people already in the environment that would actually be a good fit for securing our OT networks. Right? And maybe there could be engineering, PLC tags, or it could be somebody over in IT cybersecurity. I work with a lot of folks from engineering. I work with a lot of folks from the IT side of the house as well. And a lot of the IT folks that want to get into OT cybersecurity, I always tell them one of the best things you can do is you get an IT job at an environment that they have some industrial component. Right? Work in the back office, work in IT at a Dominion Energy, a Shell, Saudi Aramco, right? And more than likely, if you make those connections with the OT cybersecurity team and tell them your interest and you demonstrate that passion, when there does become an opportunity, you're there. And a lot of times that happens. I've seen really successful programs where you take somebody from IT cybersecurity and you have them work in OT 1 day a week, 1 day a month, 1 day a quarter. But at least they have that exposure. And that, again, it's one of those where you can determine, is this something that they want to do? Is this something that you want them to do? Right? Do they have the potential to fulfill that role? And then you can build into that. And vice versa. Take your engineers, take a PLC tech, take any of your operators, even take a plant manager, right? And throw them into IT cybersecurity for maybe not a day a week, 1 day a month, every other week, or once a quarter, just to give them that exposure to what's going on in the IT cybersecurity world. I think right now at Fluor, we have at any time upwards of about 10 engineers that are actually fulfilling roles in the IT cybersecurity side, getting them that experience. Because we actually had more than a few engineers really passionate about OT cybersecurity, which is incredible. And they would go and said, hey, I went and got my master's in cybersecurity. I'm like, that's awesome. But you don't know anything about cybersecurity, I hate to say. So let's get you some real world hands-on experience. and we work with them on that. And that we can have an engineer that now has cybersecurity, not only knowledge, but experience. And that's invaluable. So again, same thing, make sure you can do training, certifications, right? Have mentorship programs for your folks, right? IT cyber is mentoring your engineering and other OT folks, and vice versa. And so it really comes down, I guess that's kind of highlights, the things that I've seen work the best. I'm definitely open to hearing a lot more, other success stories that other people have as well. I did post this out on LinkedIn last week to see if I, got any other feedback or examples of things that hadn't seen. Didn't get any other like real earth-shattering feedback. But a lot of it is for today, where we're at in 2025. You still really are going to, if you don't have the talent, you're going to need to build it. You're going to need to grow it. Now, I'd say in a couple more years, right, when the people that are now getting into the field, right, they have some exposure, they have some experience under their belt, you're in a good place. And I would say probably in 5, 6, 7, 8 years, the OT cybersecurity space is probably going to look a lot like the IT cybersecurity space, where you have way more people out there in the field looking for only a small number of jobs that actually exist. I don't think a lot of people realize, right? The OT landscape is very, very small from a cybersecurity perspective. Most IT or most OT ICS environments, right? They're not hiring full-time team members for OT cyber. They might not never, right? They just don't have those resources, right? There's only so many shells in the world, and Saudi Aramco's and Dominions, right? I'm just naming clients that I work with. The vast majority of OT ICS environments, again, they'll never hire anybody. They just don't have those resources. It's just not the world, right, that they live in. It's just not that reality. Again, if you're looking for people, you're going to almost always, you're going to have to grow it, and then plant those seeds today and watch them grow over the next year, 2 or 3. Again, 4, 5, 6 years down the road, yeah, you probably pick somebody up with, a couple of years of experience, and they would do an okay job, especially if they're really passionate about the mission. But even reskilling, your own folks, that's still kind of, you're still growing it, you're still building it. Those really are the ways that I've seen that have been most successful. Now, I am trying to do my part. I did mention I do stuff on YouTube. So I actually have it's actually a almost 26-hour course on getting started in OT, ICS, cybersecurity. I'm going to launch a new version in probably December. Just to do an update. But so I've almost had 100,000 people take the first part, which is really cool. And I do have companies like UPS, ConocoPhillips, and others. They put all of their employees through the course, and it's on YouTube, right? So it's absolutely completely free. There's labs, review questions, and everything that go with it as well. So again, I can help a little bit with some of the training aspect if you don't have training resources and you don't have extreme budgets to send people for outside for training. So you can find that on YouTube if you look up Mike Holcomb, right, or Utilsec is under it, right, for utility security. But if we're not connected on LinkedIn, feel free to reach out and connect there. You can find my resources at mikeholcomb.com. There's my email address, YouTube. You get the idea, but feel free to reach out. I think we have a couple minutes real quick for questions if anybody has any questions. I see one that I'll look at. So how is AI changing the hiring process? Everything from how AI is impacting the recruiting process, skills needed with more AI, do we need more human defenders or less, or just different backgrounds? Yeah. So as far as there's a couple questions there, I would say maybe jump to the end first. AI is not changing OT or ICS cybersecurity currently, right? Yes, there's a lot going on. There's a lot being talked about. There's a lot being researched and tested. That doesn't change whether we need people or the amount of people that we need today. Right? Will it one day? Sure, right? But are we, we turning plants over to AI to run, 100% today? No, and that's not going to happen. I know INL, right? They're doing a lot of research with how do we use AI to enhance, grid operations as far as being able to do things like planning, weather interruptions, and you being able to allow AI to do a lot of the heavy lifting, but they're still providing that data to the analysts to make those decisions during the day, right? So there's a lot of exciting things coming, but at the moment, we're still a couple years away from AI, I think, into OT ICS space having a real impact on the number of employees that we need. So as far as the hiring process itself, I think you see that just straight across the board where AI does everything from scan resumes to determining if somebody even meets the criteria to make it to the very first round of interviews, to now people understand AI is doing that, and so they put they're putting prompt injection attacks in their resumes to make it through AI, which is absolutely fascinating in a way. Um, it makes me very grateful that I don't have to look for a job, and I don't have to go through that. And I do feel sorry for anybody that is looking to hire, because there's a lot that goes into it. Following up on your comment about only wanting to hire one or two of your students, typically, what do you think can be done to improve the pool of applicants entering the workforce in this field? It's a good question, and I think it's hard. Um, with the community college, most of those folks are still younger students. Most of them are there because mom and dad said they had to be there, or they're going to get kicked out of the house, right? So they're not really motivated. They're not inspired, right? It's those 1 or 2% that really are, and those are the students that you want to hire. Now, I would also say at the same time, you had a few students that would also come that were a little bit older, right? I still remember one of my first students. What he was actually a electrical engineer, and he actually works in cybersecurity at a nuke plant right now. That's really cool, right? And so you have that's kind of one of those, taking somebody from an OT or ICS background and giving them the cybersecurity knowledge to where then they can take that, right? Take both worlds, meld them together, then work in cybersecurity inside a plant. That's a lot of times that's best case scenario. And I think that works out more often than not. But honestly, it's kind of a 50-50, right? It's you get, it really comes down to the person. But I've seen, about 50% of folks, they come from an OT, we teach them cyber, and I've seen 50%, they come from an IT cyber background, and we teach them OT or ICS. And that's, again, even then today, that's, you're just getting the bare minimum number of folks we need. Okay. The field will be, again, it'll be flooded in 5, 6, 7 years down the road, I suspect, just like IT cyber is today, but we're not there yet. So it's, what do we do from here to there? The only other way that that increases if something really, really, really bad happens. Of course, nobody wants some catastrophic incident to occur, but if it did, you would probably have a lot more people step up and believe in the mission. But I do appreciate the time. So thank you again, everybody. Thanks for Lou for the invite. And again, reach out anytime.
Thank you, Mike.